What happens when power decides expertise is expendable? In 2025, tens of thousands of federal workers were removed. USAID programs shut down. NOAA scientists let go. IRS, USDA, NIH hollowed out. Even VA clinics weren't spared. Some terminations were so disruptive they had to be reversed just days or weeks later. The experts are gone. The programs dismantled. The consequences already arriving. This isn't new. It's happened again and again throughout history. In 1929, Joseph Stalin launched a purge, not of politicians or spies, but of the farmers and engineers who kept the Soviet state alive. By the late 1930s, this campaign escalated into the Great Purge, claiming the lives of intellectuals, scientists, and even his allies. The lesson? When power decides expertise is expendable, no one is safe. The goal? Loyalty, power, ideology over survival. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it again. 2003, Iraq. U.S. officials disbanded the Iraqi army. 400,000 trained professionals gone. The plan? Rebuild it from scratch. The result? A security vacuum. Insurgency, collapse. This purge fueled instability that later enabled ISIS. (1990s) post-Soviet Russia. Yeltsin's reforms gutted state institutions. Environmental oversight collapsed. Climate data was lost. Corruption soared. This purge hollowed out public infrastructure and fed a kleptocracy. Venezuela, the 2000s. After a massive oil strike, President Chavez replaced skilled engineers with loyalists. Venezuela's oil production collapsed in the aftermath. This purge traded competence for control, and it cost the country its core industry. 2010. Greece. During austerity, Greece cut critical public health services. Syringe exchange programs vanished. HIV infections surged over 50%. This purge dismantled prevention and opened the door to epidemic. What do these stories have in common? Institutions were purged. Experts were sidelined. Lives were lost. And we've seen it here, too. 2020, the pandemic. The United States ran out of masks. Nurses wore trash bags. Governors begged for ventilators on live TV. A supply chain, once quietly maintained by experts, had been gutted by decades of budget cuts and privatization. Experts warned, bureaucrats were sidelined. The cost? Measured in overwhelmed hospitals and funeral homes. To see where this is going, look where we've been. Stalin's first targets weren't dissidents, they were farmers. In 1929, he declared war on the Kulaks, peasants labeled too wealthy, too independent. Around 60,000 were arrested as so-called enemies. Tens of thousands of lives were taken. But the real scale came in the deportations. Over 1.8 million people exiled to Siberia, Kazakhstan, and the Urals. Whole families vanished from villages overnight. Many peasants culled their own livestock rather than surrender it to the state. It was an act of protest and desperation, but it only deepened the crisis. Some peasants buried their grain to keep it from the state. In response, the quotas rose higher. often beyond what villages could survive. Starvation spread. Stalin's forced collectivization seized land, exiled millions, and would eventually trigger the Holodomor. By 1932, this famine would sweep across Ukraine, killing 3 to 5 million Ukrainians. Grain was exported. His children starved. Stalin called it progress. He called the casualties necessary. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a blueprint. Replace truth with ideology. Replace expertise with fear. And when doctors, teachers, and scientists raised red flags, when engineers warned of failures, they were branded wreckers, enemies, removed. One of them was Peter Palchinsky. He spoke out against Stalin's grand engineering schemes, warning they would cost lives. He was arrested and put to a firing squad, not for sabotage, but for telling the truth. Then, by 1936, Stalin turned his focus inward. What would come to be called the Great Purge devoured the Soviet elite. Generals, doctors, poets, and expanded to terrorize ordinary civilians. Historians estimate that between 750,000 and 1.5 million lives were lost to firing squads, prison camps, and forced labor. The goal? Total control. The result? A nation stripped of the very people who could have saved it. Urban real incomes plummeted, reaching as low as 30 to 50% of pre-revolution levels during the famine's worst years. Even by the mid-1930s, workers still earned barely half what their grandparents had. Millions perished. The state called it victory. In 2025, the U.S. began a purge of its own. Under the banner of efficiency, entire departments were disrupted. USAID programs have been defunded and are being rapidly dismantled, decimated. Over 95% of staff are gone. Budgets for entire regional programs have been slashed by up to 95%, forcing USAID to shut down operations across Central Asia, West Africa, and the Americas. Public health infrastructure has been weakened, clinics shuttered, field programs halted, and frontline workers left without coordination or support. In Afghanistan, millions face care disruptions. In Ethiopia, food assistance has stopped for over 1 million people. In Congo, life-saving malnutrition programs are shutting down, leaving children in mortal danger. Global HIV programs like PEPFAR, the U.S. President's emergency plan for AIDS relief, face deep uncertainty. A Lancet-backed study warns up to 2.9 million people could lose access to treatment by 2030, and up to 10.75 million more could be newly infected. The scale of loss is staggering. 13.7 million children losing nutritional support, $240 million in medical supplies stranded, and over 60,000 aid workers out of jobs. This isn't austerity, it's abandonment. The IRS lost thousands of auditors during peak tax season, gutting its ability to investigate fraud, enforce tax compliance, and process returns on time. High-risk filers faced fewer audits. Billion-dollar corporations slipped through the cracks, and for everyday taxpayers, it meant slower refunds, longer delays, and a tax system tilted even further in favor of those who know how to game it. The USDA cut food safety roles, including inspectors and research scientists responsible for monitoring supply chains, detecting contaminants, and preventing outbreaks. As these roles vanish, the risks to public health grow. Conservation services have been delayed, and layoffs have hit rural development teams and research labs. Food banks and school nutrition programs have lost support. American farmers now face rising uncertainty. The Environmental Protection Agency is facing cuts of up to 65%, drastically undermining enforcement capacity and scientific research. The entire Office of Research and Development may be eliminated. Nearly 10,000 jobs could vanish. Pollution oversight, climate monitoring, and drinking water protections are all on the line. In vulnerable communities, the air is getting dirtier, the water more dangerous. The Social Security Administration plans to cut up to 7,000 employees. Field offices are closing. Wait times for disability claims are growing. Call centers are overwhelmed. Some experts warn the system itself could collapse, leaving millions at risk of delayed or missed payments. Seniors, veterans, the disabled, people who rely on help that may not come. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration is cutting staff, including experts in ocean acidification. It's lost its front line of climate monitors. Hurricane forecasting capabilities are stretched thin. Satellites critical to monitoring extreme weather face staffing gaps. Department of Health and Human Services programs, core to the nation's public health system, have been weakened. Disease surveillance systems scaled back, pandemic response units understaffed, and community health grants slashed, all on the heels of a global pandemic. Community clinics are closing. Programs for maternal health and addiction services have been defunded. Researchers are leaving in droves. Of more than 1,600 respondents, a whopping 75% of scientists who answered a poll by the academic journal Nature reported considering leaving the country entirely. This wasn't reform. It was ideological sabotage, and it came fast, executed in weeks. No transition, no impact assessments. The result? Delays in aid, staffing gaps, slower disaster response, reduced readiness, all while public trust crumbles. In Stalin's time, loyalty mattered more than truth. Today, it's the same. Experts dismissed as bloat, public servants painted as problems. But lives are on the line. In South Sudan, clinics report 60,000 children at risk of starvation. In Malawi, HIV patients ration pills. In Texas, VA delays leave veterans without care because the people who made the systems work aren't there anymore. History doesn't just repeat, it warns. Iraq, Venezuela, Greece, Stalin's USSR, many, many more. And now, us. When governments fire the people who keep us alive, disaster isn't a question, it's a clock. The Great Purge was never just Soviet history. It's a blueprint, one we're flirting with again. In early 2025, the U.S. began flying migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Not war criminals, not terrorism suspects, deportees. Some had criminal records, many didn't. A few were asylum seekers. At least 2 said they'd undergone physical torment at the hands of their home governments for political dissent. The administration called it a deterrent. Officials floated plans to expand capacity from 2,500 to 30,000. Legal access was limited. Human rights groups filed lawsuits. Migrants were held in cells once used for enemy combatants. The facility was briefly emptied under pressure, but not shut down. The orders are still live, and the precedent has been set. America isn't building its first gulag. It's just dusting one off. Institutional memory isn't a luxury. It's the thread holding civilization together. Pull it out, and everything unravels. So here's the moral of the thing. When people who protect public safety are pushed out, whether by ideology, neglect, or the shifting tides of power, the systems we count on don't just get weaker, they get quieter. They forget how to warn us. Oversight becomes suggestion, expertise becomes optional, and the risks we thought we'd buried come back. That's not theoretical. That's history. Don't let history's unheeded warnings become tomorrow's irreversible crisis. Ask the questions. Follow the evidence. Demand the receipts. Call your representative. Demand transparency on the DOJ staffing cuts. Push for a full congressional audit of who was let go and why. Demand they reinstate the experts and rebuild the firewalls between private power and public oversight. Because accountability isn't negotiable, but silence is. And your voice is the one thing they can't remove. Yet.